Stay with me till the end of this video because today we are going to uncover a mystery that has puzzled many. Why are certain rituals in Indian and yogic traditions never performed during daylight? Why are they reserved for midnight or the stillness of early dawn? The answer isn't superstition, it's about energy, alignment, and your ability to connect with the unseen. When people hear ritual, they often think of blind belief. But in yogic culture, every ritual was designed as a precise technology. Rituals are tools to align the human system with cosmic forces. Just as you wouldn't use a telescope in the blazing sunlight. Some rituals cannot function properly in broad daylight. Not because the sun is bad, but because its energy is too dominant, drowning out subtler dimensions. Daytime belongs to the sun. Its light and heat dictate the activity of life. Animals, plants, and humans all run on this solar rhythm. And the sun's dominance also means heightened physical activity, sensory distraction, and outward movement. A ritual meant to invoke subtle presences or shift delicate inner states requires conditions where these external influences are quiet. That's why night becomes the natural space. Think of darkness as a blank canvas. When daylight appears, sensory inputs reduce. You are less distracted, more inward. In yogic rituals, this inward turning is vital. The absence of sunlight allows energies to move in ways that daylight would disturb. Just as astronomers wait for darkness to study the stars, yogis use night as a time to see beyond the obvious. Sadhguru points out different times of the day and night have different qualities of energy. If you know how to make use of them, they become a doorway. If not, they become a barrier. Midnight, for instance, is a powerful threshold where the energies of the day and night are in transition. This transition can be used to open windows to dimensions that daylight simply overpowers. Just as the sun governs daytime, the moon governs the night. Lunar energies are softer, more fluid, more receptive. Rituals that seek connection with subtle beings, ancestors, or aspects of the feminine divine often require this lunar influence. That's why many ceremonies, from ancestral rites to tantric practices, are done under the moonlight, not the sun. Ancient texts mention that great yogis would never attempt certain invocations or mantras under the sun. For example, rituals to connect with the unseen beings or to invite the presence of Devi in her fierce forms were strictly nocturnal. During the day, these forces could not be properly invoked. Or worse, the imbalance of timing could cause disturbance to the practitioner. Night was the doorway, daylight the wall. You may have noticed when you sit quietly at night, the quality of silence is different. The same silence in the day feels alive with activity, but at night it becomes profound, deep, almost thick. Yogi culture took advantage of this. Nighttime silence is fertile ground for rituals where sound, mantras, chants, vibrations are used to open up consciousness. In daylight, those same sounds are lost in the noise of life. This is also why many temples, festivals happen at night. The procession of deities The fire rituals, the elaborate chants, they are done after sunset. When people are naturally more inward and receptive, you may think it's just tradition, but it's deliberate. Daylight keeps us outward, darkness turns us inward. And without inwardness, ritual is empty. So, what can you take from this? It's not about superstition, it's about timing your inner practices with the rhythms of nature. Even today, if you try meditating deeply, you will find early morning before sunrise or late at night gives you a far deeper experience than noon or afternoon. That's not coincidence. It's the same principle behind why certain rituals are never done in daylight. So, the reason some rituals are never done in daylight is simple. Daylight belongs to the sun, to the physical, to activity. Rituals that seek the subtle must be done when the physical world is quiet, when lunar energies and silence create the perfect canvas. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this video. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe to the channel for more such explorations. Share it with friends who may find this meaningful and comment below. Have you ever noticed how different night feels compared to day? Let's talk about it.